All right, we were going to talk about Bergman and the plan, right? That was our next agenda item. Although, Michael, we could shuffle if we need to. Yeah.
Yeah. Why don't while we wait for Joe, not Joe Crimmy, other Joe.
Right.
Let me go ahead to an update, legislative update. So first of all, we're waiting to hear back on the climate, or excuse me, the CPACE program, and hoping that that will be part of the April cycle. And waiting on a confirming email back from the deputy county executive. The other thing I wanted to talk about is not directly the legislature, but involving this committee directly, and is not on the agenda as a separate item. Something that several of the people on this call are very familiar with. Part of the reason, I've mentioned this before, that we even have this committee is because of some very dedicated young people, some of whom are part of this committee, who came and implored, if you will, the county legislature for a long time to form this. And they were mostly members of the Rochester Youth Climate Leaders group. They are having a summit, an energy summit online on April 14th during the morning from 9 to noon. Terry Smith is a teacher at Harley, who is somebody I know from the time that my kids attended there. And we had been in touch since the committee started, kind of keeping each other posted on what was going on. And she has, and the group have invited us to have a 45-minute slot where we could present an update on what this group is doing. And, you know, basically it's pretty wide open to anything we'd like to do. I know, again, as I said, that Helen and Leah and Liam are probably involved with this already. You're welcome to weigh in and tell us anything about it that you'd like to. But kind of my thought beyond that was that after this meeting, I could follow up with an email during which we can either set up a separate Zoom call or do it by email, to kind of talk about who would like to be part of that participating in that. Mike Garland, I haven't had the chance to talk to you about that, but it might be appropriate for you to select, you know, a person or two from staff or consultants that could just give a quick update on what it is. And we certainly would want to leave some time during that for some discussion and questions. So I'm sure 45 minutes could get filled up pretty easily. But I was glad because, as I said, because of the genesis of this committee, that this is happening and there's a chance to make that connection. So I would open to questions, or certainly if any of the student members of our committee wanted to weigh in. I think, as I said, some of them are involved in some of the other presentations that are happening as part of the summit, and not necessarily for the part that we've been invited to do. Anybody, Liam, or anyone else, Helen, you know, that's participating and just wanted to tell us a little bit about your part of it? Not to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I haven't really been involved with the planning for it this year because I'm not home, I'm at college. But I know I'm doing it's a great event. We've had it for like 4 or 5 years now, and I'm facilitating a session, I think, on some New York state level stuff. It'd be great to have you guys, someone from this group represent.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else? As I said, I'll follow up with an email to everybody who's part of the committee, and, you know, anybody who's interested in discussing. You know, we have a couple of weeks to put that together. I'm confident we can do that and make it something that would be of interest to that group, and a chance to show kind of what their efforts yielded.
Yeah, I agree, Mike. I think there's certainly a role we can play, and especially with Joe now on and about to brief us on what's happening with the Monroe County Climate Action Plan. I think that will be relevant to everybody in attendance.
Great. Thank you. I'll turn it back over to you, Matt.
All right, good deal. I see that Joe V has logged on. So Joe, thanks in advance for providing us an update on the Climate Action Plan.
Can't came on, and did he go back off?
I think he logged back off for some reason. I don't think it's not that Joe at the moment.
Okay, I saw him. I saw his picture. He was live. No April Fool's joke, but it looks like we lost him for a moment. So
Yeah, well, I'll chase him down and,
all right,
but we can keep moving.
we can keep moving on. Sue, would you like to go ahead and introduce the other Joe we have in attendance today, Joe Crimmy?
Sure thing. Thanks a lot, Matt.
Thanks.
So, really, the other John who's on our call, had reached out. We were having a conversation after our last presentation, and John had suggested maybe someone from NIPA would be a great presenter that we could learn a lot from. And so we did reach out and got a hold of Joe Crimmy, I think. I hope I say that all right, Joe. And
Yep.
he's a graduate from the University of Buffalo and Canisius College. He's an engineer with over 20 years of experience with energy and project management. Spent with the New York Power Authority for the last 13 years or more, and has done hundreds of millions of dollars worth of project delivery, and is currently the senior manager of the Western New York and Central New York Clean Energy Solutions. So looking forward to your presentation, Joe, and thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having us. Joining me is Casey Mastro, who's my colleague working out of Ithaca. I work out of Buffalo, and we both cover Western New York and Central New York, including, of course, the Finger Lakes and Rochester area. I'm going to try to share the presentation, or Sue, if I sent it to you, maybe I'll try to do it first. It would be easier, I think. I'm not sure how to do that. Share screen, I got it.
Share screen. Yeah. One of those buttons will strike pay dirt.
Yeah,
There you go.
we've been using primarily the Microsoft Teams, but I'm getting more and more used to Zoom now. So I put this presentation together because Sue and I were part of NYSERDA's Clean Energy. She reached out and asked if we could come and talk on how we could support that. I see on your agenda that we're also scheduled to talk a little bit about NYPA's Vision 2030. And I think after I go through this slide deck, Casey can touch on the high points of that. And that's really, NYPA has 10-year plans. We had a Vision 2030 or 2020 that obviously has come to an end. And so we refreshed that. And I'm happy to say we were very successful in hitting the 2020, and I look forward to our 2030 goals. But the first slide I have here is just to make you aware that any municipality can work with the Power Authority on any energy related project, and we've gotten that authority expanded to even include water projects now. And so that's in Power Authority law. We already meet all of the procurement requirements through the state. So it's a way that, if it makes sense, could expedite some procurement, maybe save you from doing RFPs and whatnot. So here's a recap of NYSERDA's Clean Energy Communities Grant Program. I'm not sure if everyone on this call is familiar with it. So I'll be just the high points. They give you points now. They started this in 2017. This is really a phase 2. And I like the way they do it this way. It's a little, gives you more options. So they give you different point levels, and depending on the size of your community, different grant levels. And here are those levels. And so you can see what's out there and available. Again, you know, NYPA is not directly involved in the CEC. We are supporting it. We were a big partner the last time around as well. So what I'm going to talk about is where that overlap is and how we can help support your communities. So these are the high impact areas where NYPA can help. Now there's other ones that have to do with, say, your clean energy code, building codes, some training, a lot of things that don't have overlap with us. I didn't list those. But so you can see, again, anywhere from doing actual upgrades, they give you 500 points, demonstrations, right up to upgrading your fleets and doing a community choice aggregation, varying levels, and you can mix and match to get to that other screen and get the actual dollars. So back in 1990, I think everyone on this call knows, and just to make sure, we're mostly known for running the hydroelectric plants and a third of the transmission. A lot of people don't even know that. A third of all the transmission in the state is owned and operated by the Power Authority. And of course, we run the hydroelectric plants in Niagara Falls and up in. And we deliver a lot of power for economic development purposes, which generally goes to for-profit businesses that bring in jobs for our communities. And so that was where we were tasked and limited to what we're able to do. Some of that's changing now, but we always got, especially in Western, people who are familiar with us, we always got asked the question, how come we can't buy power? How come, you're in our backyard? How come you're not doing anything for us? So in the 90s, we started an energy efficiency group that specifically allows us to work with you. And, there's a history to that as well. But again, at this point, suffice to know, anything energy related, any municipality or school district, we can work with you. And the idea is just to save taxpayers dollars on energy. And, right now, the two big things that we're doing in Monroe County and all of West New York and Central New York is energy efficiency audits and upgrades. And we've been doing that for decades. We started in the 90s with lighting and then just started adding more HVAC and then distributed generation. And you're probably well aware of LED streetlights. And so that's really been a push for the state and with NYPA specifically over the last 3 years. And, we're working again within Monroe County. We've worked with Rochester, and we're about to do something with Irondequoit and others. So these are, like I said, some of the more active areas that, if you go back to that list, and I sent out this to your group, hopefully you can follow around and jump back and forth. If you haven't got it, I'll send it out again. But let's go through the energy efficiency side and get a little more specific. The way our program works is we'll typically do an audit of facilities, is looking at a municipal building or a garage and look for energy hogs or older systems, opportunities where you could be saving more money. And what we usually find, and lighting might be the one difference here, what we usually find is it's something that you need done anyway, 2 years, your boiler or something like that. And rather than just go in and change it in kind, we'll do it a little more intelligently, look at what the best options are, and maybe add controls, go from an 80% efficient boiler or heater, bring it up to 90 or plus, right? And so when you're doing that, not only are you raising awareness of your energy use, but you can actually bring back to your board or your community demonstrated savings going forward by being proactive and putting in better materials or better equipment. And so that's what our energy audit will do. It'll lay that out in front of you and then rank all those, we call them energy efficiency measures. And then we'll move forward with if it makes sense, you have a selection of, say, 10 different measures. You can see which ones cost X, you can see how much savings, and you can see what their payback is. And depending on, if you're looking for the fastest payback or you have something that fits your budget, or you have equipment that you know you have to replace, you can choose from that list. And if it makes sense, then we can, with our other existing contracts, move into design for you and construction management, and then we'll turn it over to you. I'll get a little bit more into the financing and some of the advantages on that side. The audit, and I'm not going to go through all of this. I'm just, the high point, it's an ASHRAE level 2 audit, which is a standardized industry definition, really. And again, it's going to go through and look at all of your equipment, get the age of it, get the efficiency levels of it, and through experience and because it's all energy engineers that are walking through and doing this, come up with that list of measures like I talked about. And you're going to have that ranked list. You'll be able to take it back to the decision makers in whichever organization you're with. And again, whatever makes the most sense for you, if it's payback, if it's budget, or if it's equipment, move forward. And then NYPA can enter into a different agreement, right? Because it's not all or nothing. We'll do the audit first, and then if nothing works out, you can walk away. But if you are going to move forward, then we identify what you want to move forward with, and go into a design, which again, there's different options. We can do a design build, which is a lot quicker, or we can do a more slower approach where you see the complete design before it's gone out and bid. And then we can manage that construction right on through. As far as the financing goes, I mean, the market's pretty cheap right now, right? Bonding and everything. It's a nice way to go. In general, NYPA will carry any costs of our projects from day one until you walk away, right? So if walking away is after the audit, then we're going to ask for the cost of the audit to be paid. If there's measures that you want to go forward with, that cost will just get rolled into the other project. And typically, our projects are $1 million to $5 million range, and typically will take anywhere from a year to 3 years. So we'll be carrying those costs for you right through that time frame. At which point, we can come up with a bonding conduit solution for you. So what we're doing is we're taking all of our projects. Right now, we're averaging around $350 million a year of projects. We'll go out every 6 months and bond that. And we give you the opportunity to come in, piggyback on that bond. There could be a benefit there for you. I don't know. It depends on the organization. We are trying to include that as a green bond. So in other words, the financial institutions that are purchasing this risk are supporting it with only green companies. Again, that might fit into your action plan. It might be something that you're interested in. Short of that, our bonding is pretty much like your bonding. So you might find it more advantageous to go out yourself. We're indifferent on that side of it. The only nice thing, the really nice thing is it lets you see what that cost is going to be and really, I guess, time your entry into the market as opposed to paying as you go or, chunking it and then waiting for it to be finalized. We'll let it finalize first, and you'll have a couple months to decide how you want to move forward. So LED street lighting, again, has been what we've seen in the municipal market over the last 3 years. So if you haven't done it yet, you should be doing it. There's lots of ways to do it. You can move forward with a third party. You can do it yourself. We're out there. We've come up with what we think is a nice solution. It's all in one for you. Bills will come up with a real nice pro forma of what your cost savings would be. And that's straightforward and easy because your bills are all formulaic. In other words, they're not metered, right? So there's no guessing really. Whatever your light that's installed, they just kind of multiply that out by 12 hours a day typically. I mean, they might, depending on your utility, change that month to month, but on average, that's what it is. So we can give you a real nice idea of what your savings could be, and everything we do is transparent. We'll show you all the costs involved. The thing that most decision makers probably don't understand, depending on how close they are to it, the real savings, that the opportunities for savings for municipalities is more on the facility side than on the energy side. So with New York State, typically, there's exceptions, but typically the utilities have owned your street lighting system. And so when you get your bill from them, they're charging you a facility charge and they're charging you an energy charge. Some of them even blend it together, but most of them separate it. And, you know, if you looked at your bill, you might get the idea that that facilities charge is like a maintenance charge. But we can show you what a real maintenance cost is, and it's usually about 1/10 of that. So it's for the utility, it's the maintenance, but really most of it is more like depreciation of the assets. And I like to call it, show it as a more of a, sorry, my phone was ringing, like a lease on a car that you never stop paying the lease. So typically, and it depends on the size of your municipality, but the energy savings is only 1/3 of the savings that you can realize. 2/3 of your potential savings it would come from your facilities. And I bring that up because after a lot of arm twisting over these 3 years, the utilities have finally come back and offering their own programs. But you'll notice in their own programs that they energy savings, which is 1/3 of what you could be seeing. So anyway, you know, NYPA will come in depending, you know, if it's a bigger system, we can do a full design, which would go above and beyond what you have existing. For example, you know, you might have a street that was built out over a decade or 2 or 3, and you have different levels of lighting at different areas down the street. It's never been designed as a whole. And so you know, when you take ownership and you're going to upgrade your fixtures, that's the perfect time to make it a more complete design. So it generally makes sense to do that when you have a bigger, you know, fleet or inventory, 500 plus lights. And so we have an option that includes that. You know, if they have a smaller system, say, you know, you only have 100 lights, you're a more rural town or more suburban town, doesn't necessarily make sense to pay for that extra design. So we have a more rapid response option as well. And that's up to, again, the municipality. And we handle the construction, the change out. And, you know, with that, there's other opportunities with technology, which, okay, I wasn't sure if it was on that slide. So, you know, besides upgrading your light, there's opportunities to put in some sensors, say, that can, I mean, they can do anything these days, from keep track of parking spots, if, you know, if you're a more busy commercial street, to keep track of snow and ice buildup on the road and send signals of, hey, you know, this area needs to plow, rather than have your fleet just run a regular route and do areas that don't need it. And everything, whatever you can imagine. It's like apps on your phone. Someone comes up with a new thing to put on a street light pole. The idea, though, is you can't do that unless you own that pole. And not necessarily the pole, right? Because if it's hanging off a utility pole, you own that fixture and the arm that's on there. And so with that, it's valuable property across your entire town to do some of these more smart technologies. So that's those are all kind of standalone things that we can do when it comes to street lighting. above and beyond that, and it's not required, but we can also handle the maintenance that is then required because you have the ownership. With ownership comes responsibility. And that's often a scary point for a lot of municipalities because it's something they hadn't done before. This takes it all off your hands. And the way it works right now is your light goes out. No one says anything. Constituent finally gets mad and calls the town. Town has to call the utility, and the utility shows up immediately and fixes it, right? No. Maybe they show up sometime, and if they do, they generally don't tell you. And maybe it's after you get 2 or 3 more calls from that same not happy constituent. The way our program works is it uses some of that smart technology. And so each light has a sensor, not a sensor, an asset management tool that can connect. There's various ways that they network, but a lot of them use, say, a cell chip. And then if it goes out, the chip will just send like a text message to our server saying, hey, I'm out. And then that server says, okay, that's pole 829. That's a 30-watt LED made by Signify, whatever. All the information's in there, and it automatically kicks out a work order for someone to go and replace it. And so they have to be out there within a certain amount of time. Typically, it could be replaced before you even get a call. If you do get a call from that resident, you can double check with us, or whoever's doing that will probably already have a report and say, yeah, I see that went out Tuesday night and the crew's scheduled to be there Friday or something like that. So it's a lot better. It's definitely less work than what you currently have, and for a better service. And we've priced it out, and it's something that it's very low. It's like $22 or less per light, which again, if you look at that compared to your facility charge, and you can look on your bill and look at your facility charge, and that's more like $100 or something per fixture.
Joe, Matt here. I had a quick question for you before you move on.
Sure thing.
Yeah, when you talk about NYPA direct service, does NYPA actually own a fleet of bucket trucks?
No, we like most things we do. Like I said, we follow the state procurement, but we put it out to bid, and because we put it out to bid across the entire state, we got very good pricing. The company that we're doing our maintenance with is I think it's EJ. I don't know if it's EJ Electric, but it's EJ something, and they have facilities in Rochester already, and they're going to be doing stuff.
So you would
Buffalo.
sub them
But
to?
yeah, no, we're not
change
doing
out the
it.
lights. Okay, I just wanted to clarify. I didn't think so, but I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, but we do have like no, that's good. We do have a war room. I don't like that term, but we have a command center where they all those calls go into, and we are directing and keeping track of that contractor.
Got it. Thank you.
So those are the two main things that we've been doing over the last anywhere from 30 to 3 years, right? Some other services that we participate in that might be of interest and fit into the CEC program is this Clean Energy Advisory Services. That's a broad term, but rather than us doing an audit and then doing construction and actually implementing things ourselves, we just play the advisory role for you. And this came out of a lot of the solar installations and the solar power purchasing agreements. And in case you're not aware, that the real economic motivator there are some federal tax credits. And so for a municipality, you're not going to realize those tax credits because you don't pay tax. So a third-party developer comes in and they monetize those tax credits, and that's how they're able to sell you that power back at a lower price. So, and the same thing applies with us. We can't come and do these projects for you because we don't pay tax. So we advise you, and then we put our costs of advising you, like putting together that RFP for the third party. We put our costs written right into the RFP. So the winning developer pays us. Like it ends up, you don't even see a charge. That's how that grew up. But they're doing a whole bunch of other things now. So really anything that you can think of, community choice be another thing that they can help support building out. And electric vehicle chargers are, again, one of the things that have grown in the last few years, as you can imagine. NYPA is taking the lead across the state in putting out fast chargers. We're doing it a lot of the throughway rest areas and along, obviously we want to support travel across the state, but we're also doing it in other areas around the cities. So Monroe County would be one. So we're doing those as install and operate ourselves. And so if someone comes knocking on your door from NYPA, that's how that program works. We're looking more for just a piece of property and a host agreement so that we can, use that property for X amount of years. That being said, other municipalities have said, hey, that's great. I understand that town didn't fit your short list, right? But we'd like to put one in ourselves. And so those contracts are available to you if you want to. So we've not only have we already gone through the procurement process, but we've discovered who's good and who's not good. And the contracts that we retain and the specs that we've come up with are proven. So if you're going down that road, fast chargers, we can definitely help. The slow chargers, we're not that involved with. We could help a little bit, but the economics aren't really there. And the latest and the last thing I want to talk about is our blended power program. So like I started off with saying that we've been restricted statutorily in only selling hydropower for economic development purposes. I think it was the 2019 budget, we finally were granted as a trial run some statutory authority to sell blended power. Blended is green assets, so RECs, to any municipality across the state. So what this means, again, it's part of your climate action plan. If you're going to require or strive to only purchase green power, we can sell you 100% green power. Or if you have an 85% or 100 or 51% goal, we can blend in the RECs, the green assets from our hydro into power that we sell to you from purchasing on the open market. And so that's the most of what I had to walk through. I'm going to throw it to Casey though to just talk to you quickly on what our Vision 2030 is and what those lofty goals are and how they've changed a little.
Thanks, Joe. Good afternoon, everybody. As Joe mentioned, I'm Casey Mastro. I'm the Senior Key Account Executive for Central New York. Central New York kind of being loosely defined as Finger Lakes, Central New York regions, and Southern Tier. We're going to talk a little bit about NYPA's 10-year plan, Vision 2030, which was recently released. Essentially, NYPA's vision for Vision 2030 is not necessarily to continue on as we had the last 10 years, but to really thrive in a resilient way, specifically after, as you all know, Superstorm Sandy. The entire state is looking to be as resilient as possible, and we want to do that with a base foundation through clean energy. The mission, essentially, of Vision 2030 is based on 5 strategic priorities. The first is to preserve and enhance NYPA's already existing hydropower assets that have been operating since 1958. The second, and a significant tier here, is the decarbonization through natural gas, and we want to pioneer. We want to be the leaders in pioneering that path to statewide decarbonization. over the next 10 years. We also, the third tier of this plan is to continue being the New York State leading transmission developer. As Joe had mentioned, we are a significant contributor to the state's electricity and also the assets for transmission. So that is a key pillar in our 10-year plan. The fourth and most important probably for you folks is to focus significant efforts on our customers and how they play a role in the economic, the development economically and energy-wise in the state. So we are looking to do significant things here in that demographic of tiers through the digitization of our efforts, of our solutions, of our products, and how we provide de-siloed packages to our customers, starting with some of the energy efficiency things that Joe C. had mentioned and expanding from there. And the fifth priority is essentially to reimagine the New York State canal system. So some of you might be aware, we were given the authority over the New York State canals in the last couple of years. And we want to make sure that that canal system is run optimally and efficiently to reduce maintenance and costs, as well as providing the opportunities for large-scale economic development across the state. So essentially, that is the five strategic priorities of the Vision 2030 plan, really based significantly on de-siloing efforts, digitization of data management, and how we can partner with our wide demographic of customers, one being local governments, all public entities in the state. We have the statutory authority to work with and provide value for as an independent third party, not for profit, right? So we feel that this plan is based on a strong foundation of trust, just by the nature of how the Power Authority exists as an arm of the state. And we've been able to, in the last 4 years or 5 years or so, develop a much stronger footprint in the central New York region, based on some of those core values. And I'd be happy to talk in more specifics in and around, a lot of what Joe had mentioned, specific around the CEC program, but how we, plan to administer, products and services to reach the goals for the fourth tier, the customer engagement, and how we can further push energy and clean energy solutions to our customers. It's not easy to talk about a 10-year plan in 5 minutes, I'll tell you, but I think we did it.
Good deal. Are there any
So,
questions for Joe or Casey?
Yeah, open it up to questions, please.
Yeah, I have a quick question, Casey. I wasn't sure I totally understood. I thought I heard you say NYPA wants to lead the decarbonization. Which is
Correct.
great. Does that mean you have a plan to close the natural gas power plants that are downstate that NYPA owns? I missed that piece of, you said something about gas-fired power plants in conjunction with decarbonization. So could you elaborate on that?
So I don't believe there's any near-term plans for closing any plants, right? So essentially, NYPA needs to pioneer that path to decarbonization by acting as what we'd like to do from really an R&D standpoint is lead as a test bed for innovation, ensuring reliability and affordability of the grid as a whole. But I don't think that necessarily means closing existing natural gas plants.
Yeah.
We need to identify
in the long run, but we recognize that we're not doing that in the next 5 years. For instance, our R&D group is right now demonstrating large battery storage. We're actively participating in the offshore wind and being, we're handling the middle piece of when that power comes right onto land. We're handling like the transmission and the sub, I can't think of the word, but all those efforts in the long run to get us to where maybe we don't need that. That's what we're striving for.
Right.
But
so
recognizing there is no better solution right now for New York City than those
Yeah.
plants.
step one, Sue, is going to be to identify plants for decommissioning, right? And then, step two would be investigating, low carbon options. Synthetic gas, for example, battery storage is another example, right? So it's going to be kind of I think, a tiered process over that time period.
Okay, great, thanks. Thank you both.
Sure.
I have a couple of questions. My name is Clement Chung. I work at the County Department of Environmental Services. I haven't had a chance to update this body yet about some information that we found out since our last meeting about the Clean Energy Communities Program, but I think I can give an update a little later on. But specifically with NIPA, have you worked with counties before on some of these, especially the two areas you were talking about with the energy audits and the LED street lighting? We had a conversation with our local CEC coordinator, and they told us that there are certain high impact actions that aren't really designed for counties, LED streetlights being one of them, because they don't believe that the counties essentially own and maintain a high inventory of that. Now I have to confirm with our DOT whether or not that's true for us, but it wasn't something that was highlighted as a possibility for us as a county, as county government. I'm sure, your services are applicable to all of our municipalities within our county, and we can definitely help to spread the word about, your services. But I'm thinking, more specifically for us as an organization, how have you worked with other counties with that?
Yeah, so
I'll
we've
take that.
we've worked with Monroe County. Like right now, we've done over $20 million from natural gas, I should say, landfill gas. That installation, a couple phases, we helped support those projects. But yeah, we have a long history of working with counties, and I would be surprised. We're not the experts on CEC and what NYSERDA will give you credit for. However, I fully get their point, because most counties don't have an inventory of streetlights. If Monroe County is different, I would be very surprised if they didn't give you credit.
We light the expressways, the 490 and 590, and we have about $7 million on the books of projects related to street lighting alone.
Right.
And that's after a couple $1 million that has been spent in the past couple of years. So we do have a significant amount of street lighting.
So
Yeah.
for an example, your neighbor, Wayne County, that's good news, by the way, that there are some assets there to be taking a look at from the county's perspective. In many cases, we find that the counties, though, as was mentioned by Clement, maybe don't necessarily have those assets, but where the counties have been very helpful also. And they're doing, we did this in Wayne County starting in 2018, as they've been acting as a fantastic aggregator from town and village perspective to get folks together and to, as Clement mentioned, get the word out. I think that we, in Wayne County right now, we are completing the installation for 9 to 11 individual municipalities throughout the county for LED street lighting, and that was spearheaded, starting with the county itself. So Brian Pincelli in Wayne County specifically was the point person to help us with that. That proved to be a very positive experience. In fact, you folks would have an advantage than maybe some of the early adopters, because we've gotten so much farther along with the investor-owned utilities and working with them to get things done in a timely manner. So on both sides of that coin, we would be able to work with Monroe County from the perspective of your own assets, or what would be your own assets if you don't own them already, and also how to engage with individual municipalities who have not yet pursued this energy efficiency option.
So Pat, one thing I'll point out, because I know you've been upgrading those roads and a lot of your costs are with the Jersey barriers or putting in new conduits. And that's not typically something that our program supported very much. But we do have the option, and the city of Rochester took us up on it, and some others have as well, to allow you to use our our materials contract. So, we went out to bid across the entire state and we got very favorable pricing. And so that's something that any municipality could just use us to purchase those lights, say.
Feedback, yeah.
Yeah, because you're probably pretty far along in design and you're going to have crews. You already have crews going down your 390 or whatever. Getting us involved in design and trying to implement it doesn't really make sense.
No, and I think the spirit of Clement's question is really how do we get credit for it through the Clean Energy Communities program? Because that's where we seem to be stalled in that kind of regard.
I'd recommend a call directly to Brad Tito, who's kind of heading that up with NYSERDA. Again, it's NYSERDA's program. We're here to help you guys as much as we can, but we're not involved with the giving of credit and such.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good deal. I just had one final quick question. I realize NYPA's authority for the Erie Canal is still fairly new, but I'm just curious if you have an idea what the canal system might look like in 10 years or so. How might it be different than what we see right now? Have you been able to give that some thought? I know you have 10 years though.
There's a lot of people giving that a lot of thought. I'm not sure Casey or I are the closest ones to it. I know we had a worldwide competition for ideas of things to do 2 years ago. I think it coincided with the 150 year anniversary of the canal, something like that. Again, it was opened up across the world and they had hundreds of suggestions. I know they selected a couple that they're moving forward with, but I don't even know what those are. Casey, do you remember? They made an announcement, but I wasn't close on it.
I don't remember.
Okay.
I
Yeah, I was
like
vaguely
the, I
aware
like
too.
the,
Just curious. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I like the ice skating proposal. I'd like to go ice skating on the canal if possible.
Well, we need
Yeah.
cold weather.
Yeah.
We need that. Joe, can you go back to the blended power program and give a little more detail on that? Is that
Sure.
selling hydropower directly to municipality, or is that through RECs and other accounting measures?
Yeah, so it's not selling our hydropower. We didn't get authority to do that. Most of that's been, allocated and dibs called a long time ago. It's using, we're going out as a load supplying entity, purchasing power for you or whomever on the market, right? Generally, brown power or what are standard power that's out there. And then we're tying in our RECs that from our existing facilities to, partner that up and make it green in the eyes of the state, I guess. And that would come with an annual true up of how many RECs were retired that you can, use as certification. Does that answer your question, John?
Yeah, I think that helps. Thank you.
Hey, Joe, I thought last year the legislature granted NYPA more authority in relationship to developing renewable energy assets.
Well, I think that was part of the same legislative action. And I think that was specifically in support of the offshore wind. So to build those substations that allow taking on the power, we didn't have the authority to do that before. And so I think there may be some spillover from that to other areas that we'll be able to support going forward. But that was our focus, and that was the real driver for the state in that part of the legislation.
Okay, and could you just touch on the transmission that NYPA owns? Is it the high power transmission, or is it,
Well, yes, I think it's some of the highest voltage that runs in the state is NYPA's. Again, I am not an expert on our operations side of things, but I can tell you that we own at least one of the lines going from Niagara all the way to Marcy, which is just north of Utica. That Marcy is like the central hub of transmission lines. That facility is run by the Power Authority. as well as a lot of the lines that run into it. So we have that real high voltage line I was talking about. That comes down from our St. Lawrence project program. And so, yeah, but mostly they go from our hydroelectric plants into and around Marcy. I know we're redoing one that was, man, it's wood. That's how old it is. It's a high voltage line. It was built, I don't know if it was in the 30s or something. And we're currently redoing it. And, you know, if you know anything about these type of projects, they take 5 years to a decade just to get the studies and the approvals done. And so we've been working on that project for at least a decade. But we started construction maybe 3 years ago, and they're starting to really make some headway on it.
Yeah, okay. And in addition to procurement of energy and RECs, blending your RECs, and you can help finance the development of solar projects for county government, should they want to?
Yes, I mean, we can actually install solar if you want to. But what we've found is the economic driver for a lot of solar projects, especially for bigger ones, are on your tax credit side. So you wouldn't want to own it. And so therefore we wouldn't want to be financing it for you. If you do, and you know, we've done installations at SUNY campuses and transit authority tops of their bus garages and such, then you just install and own it. And we have experience and contracts that would allow us to do that as well.
Thanks.
Good deal. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Casey. We really appreciate your time. That was quite informative.
Yeah, and you'll feel free to call us on any kind of questions that pop up. You know, that's part of our 2030 is to be closer to our customers and to be your trusted energy advisor. And you know, so that doesn't mean only when you're purchasing something from us. You know, we're happy to point you in a different direction if you're looking for something.
Thanks, Joe. I know we met virtually. Mike Garland from DES. I was on the Zoom call with Bob Franklin, the county CFO. So he's familiar with the agreements and relationships that we've had with NYPA over the years. And you referenced even the landfill to gas power plant. We did a 10-year low interest loan on that, and it was very worthwhile for the county in that project, and a number of other projects that we've done very successful with NYPA. So as we formulate our climate action plan, as you know, this is our advisory committee, there's going to be a lot of projects that are going to fall out of that. They're going to be associated with, you know, governmental operations, you know, county operations, and we're going to have to find creative ways to fund them. And we may need advice along the way. So I appreciate your availability. You know, while we're developing the climate action plan, but also once we get into implementation, how we may be able to fund these in a cost-effective way.
Yes, that's true, Mike. Thanks. So Joe and Casey, this is probably the first time we'll be meeting with you. Feel free to stay on because talking about the climate action plan, Joe V is with us, and he's going to bring us up to speed as to what's been happening since we met last. Joe, please go ahead. Can we hear Joe?
He doesn't appear to be muted either. I don't know.
No.
Although the phone number is muted. Maybe he's calling in separately and his phone's muted.
We have a screen for Joe. Mike, you want me to walk down there? Is he in his office?
Mike, you're on mute if you're trying to communicate with Tina.
Yeah.
That's all right. I think he's trying to text Joe.
Thanks, Pat. Yeah, I'll text him now.
Okay, sorry.
Technology is a great enabler and great disabler too.
He is here. He can hear us,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't appear that we can hear him.
No.
You're on mute. Okay, well, let's see.
He's connecting right now. There you go. See, all he has to do is hit the microphone and he's
Can
good.
you guys hear me now?
Mhm.
Yes. All right.
Okay, sorry. All right, I'll start. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, without the echo,
Okay.
which I want to.
Now, I had to turn off my phone because there was some feedback. I can't hear you guys, so I'll just give my spiel, and for some reason, my computer audio is down really low, and I'm not having good thing. And I'm not at the office, but I had to come home because I had to stop at on another project on the way. So let me just give you a quick update on this. All right. So since we met last, our consultants, Bergman Associates and Michael Baker, what their task was to look into what the data collection needs are. So that's really what they've formulated for us, essentially. And I just got it from them this week. They're together data needs are us at the county. So what that means is, I'll read it right here from Rob from Michael Baker. Said we're assembling data needed to develop a baseline in-house gas operations in Monroe County. What they're using is the ICLEI ClearPath tool to develop this inventory, and we'll need the county's participation in assembling the data required. ClearPath has multiple methodologies or frameworks for calculating GHG emissions for each of the individual subcategories it identifies. In order to streamline data collection, the following is a set of screening questions that will allow Michael Baker and Bergman to select methodologies that are most appropriate for Monroe County. So pretty much, I'm not going to go through the exact lists of what they are. It's questions that are mostly going to be answered by what I call Team DES in it. As you all know, we also have an internal working group where we're getting input, feedback, questions to departments and department heads within the county. But a lot of these questions that they're asking us, I'm going to filter them first through our DES group first thing next week. And then from that point, we're going to move on to getting back together with the internal working group and get all these questions answered for our sub-consultant and our consultant to move forward on this GHG inventory path. So that's pretty much a summary of where we are with things.
Good deal. Thanks, Joe. Any questions for Joe and for Bergman through Joe? No, I guess not. Okay. Joe, thanks again for that update.
Okay.
All right. Michael, I think we've probably covered a great deal of the agenda so far.
We've covered everything except the public forum.
Yeah.
Before doing that, and I know very often there's not anything, but I did want to ask a question that didn't really have a place on the agenda, just for any feedback. So one of the interesting things to me as we've been going through the process is all the different programs and groups that are out there all working on their own thing regarding the environment, sustainability, et cetera. And, you know, we've picked up some initiatives with the counties and that, and I certainly am not as well schooled as some of you in all these different ones. I wanted to ask about one in particular, not as an endorsement, but just because it kind of crossed my path. And I'm trying to see how it fits in with the other ones. Just recently, the week before last, I got invited like the day of the meeting to a group that was forming Color Henrietta Green. And I listened to them. They had people from the overall Color Your community, people involved, kind of talking about how they get started. They mentioned that they are thinking of trying to initiate a Color Monroe County Green. I know from the emails with the Rochester Climate Youth Rochester Youth Climate Leaders, I always mess that up, group, that there's a Color Your School Green aspect of it. And I believe Brighton has a Color Brighton Green group going, and I wouldn't be surprised if other communities do as well. So I was just wondering if anybody has experience with it, just as by way of an update, but especially in terms of how this kind of fits with all the different programs that are out there.
I mean, what I can share with you, Michael, is that this is a kind of a project of the local climate movement, the Climate Solutions Accelerator of the Genesee Finger Lakes region. Previously, the Rochester People's Climate Coalition has provided or is providing kind of institutional support for local teams that are, municipally embedded. And then it's up to those individual teams to decide what are their priorities. And groups like Citizens Climate Lobby and the Solutions Accelerator provide kind of support and training and help people learn how the governmental systems work, how to lobby, how to prioritize, that sort of thing. So it's, I don't know if that answers your question, but what direction Color Henrietta Green goes will probably be up to whatever kind of subset of people in your community are, what they decide they think is really important for Henrietta.
And that was the gist of the first meeting. They did some exercises where people kind of just put out the things that were important to them, and they tried to get some consensus on prioritizing those. I was also interested in terms of, going back to the formation of this group and talking about the 2 stages we'll go through with the plan, phase 1 for the county and then 2 for the community. One of the things that we've talked about is through the county and our website being kind of a clearinghouse or a source of information for all the different programs that are out there, just so people can go to one source in Monroe County and see what is out there. That's something I've, particular interest in. And I just wasn't sure where this effort fit in, if it was regional, if it was broader, if it was statewide, if it even went beyond that. So that is kind of helpful. And I'm not sure, I know they wanted to circle back and talk some more, but I'd be interested to see, just how many communities in Monroe County are in some stages of putting together a group. Is this, to anybody who's able to answer, are there other programs that would be in essence doing the same or very similar things, other community-based programs?
Mike, I believe there's one in Fairport as well.
Okay. But I was saying, besides this Color Your Communities Green, we've signed on with the Climate Smart Communities and all that. I just, I'm trying to get some better sense of how these, if it's just like pick your flavor and they're all doing good work and similar work, or if there's some, really distinct differences between them.
I just, go ahead. If you want to go, Matt, go ahead.
Oh, no problem. No worries, Sue. I was just going to say, Michael, I know the various college campuses are all doing something or another. When I was at MCC, we had a focus on bicycling and recycling and so on and so forth. But that was all grassroots for the most part and kind of developed inside the college. So there's probably a lot of activity happening at Nazareth, St. John Fisher, RIT, U of R, MCC, and elsewhere that we may or may not be aware of unless we've got children in the in the summit that we talked about earlier. One of the topics is Color Your School Green, so we'll be able to hear some more about that. And I know one of the students who's involved, so I was going to reach out to her. But thank you, this is helpful.
Yeah, Mike, I would just add that I think it's just a hodgepodge of things all across, the state of New York, really. Many communities have their own, like Brighton has a sustainability committee, right? Pittsford has a similar committee, but for like an organized effort at the municipal level, if you will. This is really a very unique, I think, path forward that the Climate Solutions Accelerator has been pursuing to enable and empower citizens to be engaged with their local governments and to create a kind of a shared platform over time. But it's just not a rigid thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with Sue. I think the boundaries are really flexible. I know in Pittsford, we have an environmental committee and we have a Parks and Recreation committee. They're both staffed by volunteers. Those could be conduits for similar activity too, that might be homespun.
Yeah, and I think that was talking to the supervisor in Henrietta, that he was thinking this could kind of fill that rather than creating their own committee. Of course, they have the conservation board and, you know,
Right.
the Parks and Rec board, but that on the issues of sustainability, they could kind of just piggyback with this group that was forming. Okay.
Yeah, there's some, and the supervisor might be interested in exploring that relationship between Color Brighton Green and the Sustainability and Oversight Committee that Brighton has. Like, both exist and they interact with each other, but they're different authorities, right? And functions and served by different bodies. So.
Great.
Good deal. Michael, may I just mention that though we haven't had anyone formally register in advance for the public forum, we did receive one email a month ago on March 1st from Boston College senior Kyle Rosenthal, and I wanted to thank the county and in particular Mike Garland and Tina for responding thoughtfully a week later with a great reply to his concerns. So many thanks for doing that. That's been our lone public forum to date so far. But the good news is he was aware of what we were doing, had a question about recycling and waste, and we answered him promptly and definitively. So thanks again. Hats off to Mike and Tina and the DES staff for putting together the response.
And during this
Very well.
meeting, as we've been meeting, we got an email asking about being able to view the meetings and from a Henrietta resident, and I replied that the recordings do go up, but she was asking if they are also live stream, and I didn't want to answer without knowing for sure that Mike or Tina, that these meetings aren't available as they happen, or are they?
They are not.
Okay.
What happens is, and I just sent you the core group an email that explains this. What happens is they are being recorded to the cloud as we speak.
Yep.
This is not, this YouTube account is through the legislature and I don't have access to it. So the ledge folks have to take the recording from the cloud and put it on their page. Does that make sense to everybody?
Yeah, and I directed her to the subpage of the legislature's website for the climate action plan, and where there is the opportunity to watch the videos. So she should be all set.
Yeah.
But that's
And I
enough.
responded to her as well, Mike. So
Thank you, Tina.
you're welcome.
Maybe I'll just chime in on that too, but my understanding was that the public would always have the opportunity to participate because we had a public forum, so that gave the impression that it was, for all intents and purposes, accessible while it was live. Is that what I'm going to follow back up with Jack and just double check on that and see if that was the intent, or perhaps it's just the opportunity for them to be able to go back and watch that. But
Mike, we probably left that open because I know advanced registration is required for the public forum. So I thought we always left the opportunity for us to give them the
I
link if they wanted to. Yeah.
Yep, there you go.
sign on and join
Yeah,
us.
there you go,
public-
Matt. That's exactly right. It's not people just bombing in, you know.
No Zoom bombing here, but
Yeah,
if
Zoom,
they
that
register
would
in
get
advance.
out of hand. Yeah,
Yeah.
they could get crazy. So you're right, advanced registration required.
And then I think we could provide them the link if they want to talk to us for 5 or 10 minutes.
Perfect, excellent, okay.
I also
That's
thought,
good.
Mike, that was the purpose of the email box as well, so that people could email their questions similar to what they do with the legislature.
Yep, excellent.
Yeah.
Yep, yeah, good job. Okay, thanks.
You bet, Mike. Clem, did you have an update you wanted to provide us too? I just
Oh,
saw
yeah.
Sue U. Smith's note, and we certainly don't want to
No, that's
break
okay.
for the month if we haven't heard from you. Please
No,
go
that's
ahead.
fine. Whatever the committee wants to hear. I do have something that might be easier if I just kind of share my screen and then show you. If I can find the right one.
There you go. Should be all
You see
set.
this?
There you go.
Okay, so you see the table there?
Yes, thanks.
Okay. So yeah, so as I was mentioning, in response to Joe's presentation, in the last month, Jasmine and I had a virtual meeting with the new Haley Farrington over at the Genesee Regional Finger Lakes Planning Council. His name is Rob Richardson, and also his colleague Jenny Lowenstein. And they actually presented, which I think I just checked the minutes, there was a note given out to the committee that there was a community presentation, a webinar given on the new CEC program, this round 2, they're calling it leadership round. And that's where this table came from. Following that presentation, that's when we had our conversation with Rob and Jenny, and they were very, very helpful. Rob is the former assistant city manager at the city of Canandaigua, and he's actually been through both the CSC and CEC programs with the city. So he's very familiar with this, and that puts him in a very, good position for them to help, other communities as they progress along the certification program. So we had a very good conversation. I just wanted to share this slide. It pulls a couple of pieces of information from their presentation. As I was mentioning before, it kind of shows the matrix of what different actions apply to different types of communities based upon their reading of the program. And you can see for the county, there's a few which we are eligible for and ones that, at this point we aren't. So for example, the LED streetlights, as we talked about, I kind of pushed back on that a little bit because I think when they were designed, when NYSERDA was designing this program, they might have assumed that counties don't have an inventory of street lighting, whereas Pat helpfully confirmed that we have a very large inventory of LED streetlights. So I don't know if necessarily we are precluded from getting up to 900 points, in the program. That's something that Rob said that he would, go back to NYSERDA and see if we could get some updated information. Similarly, the energy code enforcement training, we don't administer energy codes as a county, but we do have facilities which have to comply with New York State Building and Energy Codes. So maybe there's an opportunity there for us to get some additional points if we do serve the purpose as a community coordinator for a lot of the municipalities in different areas. So that could be one area that we could also, kind of add additional points. But as you can see, on the left-hand side there, I've kind of added in the amount of points that are available for each one of these action items. And then in the top right corner is kind of how those translate to grants for counties or communities of our size, so large communities as they're looking at it. So you can see, if you score over 3,000 points, there's about $30,000 available in grant money, and there's 50 awards available for that. And as you go up the scale, the dollar amount grants, so these are all additive, go up, but then there's fewer and fewer awards. So the reason why this is called the leadership round is that they're incentivizing communities to take leadership and then show the other communities what's possible. So that's why they're kind of limiting the awards. So there's a certain amount of risk because we don't know how far along some other communities are in terms of being able to check off these points. But there is, obviously it adds a little bit more urgency, I guess, to getting some of these things done, because if we really want to chase those grants, we have to be very committed to moving some of these forward. So, in some cases we are further ahead than other communities. So for example, PACE financing, it's a fairly, it's not very, at the ground level, it takes a little bit of understanding and education about. So it's great that we're already very far along in that process of determining where we stand with that. And then there's others where, so for example, the clean fleets, some of these programs or some of these point systems are graduated. So the more you apply, the more actions you undertake, the more points you can score. And Rob's advice is to account for as many as you can, and then you can always add to it. So unlike the Climate Smart Communities program, where you have to wait until you gather in all the activities and then submit one application and they determine your certification level, this is kind of more of a rolling program. And therefore, you might be eligible for the 3,000 point level, but then, in 6 months later, you might be eligible for the 4,000 point level. So that was really helpful to know, that it doesn't all have to be a one-shot deal. So I think those were the highlights that I kind of took from it. Jasmine, did you have anything else you wanted to add?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah, Clem, are they additive? Like, can you get the 30,000 grant and then a 70,000 grant?
So the point levels are thresholds. So when you reach the 3,000 point level, you're eligible for $30,000 worth of grants. When you reach the 4,000 point level, then you're eligible for 40. So you'd only need to add another 1,000 points to be able to access the next level of grants.
Right, which seems like a great deal. And then my other comment, I guess, is I think the community campaigns, you have to like pre-register your community campaign before you do it.
That's correct. Yeah. So that's something that it's very interesting. They've said that they've seen communities do everything from do a very kind of small targeted campaign, get their points, and then move on. And then other communities, they've really kind of used that as a platform to leverage other departments within the community and say, hey, having a process where we get community campaigns out there, is really the goal, rather than just kind of focusing on the points specifically. And it's helped improve their process. So that's something that is very interesting to us. So that one in particular, you can see on the bottom left-hand side, not only do you get the 800 points, it's also eligible for what they call action grants, which is a subset of the program, of which there's about $60,000 available for that. So I'd have to go back into the details to figure out exactly how those would be applied. But it's one of the things that we'd be looking at, because we definitely have a lot of things that we would like to be involved and communicate to Monroe County residents.
Yeah, I feel like I saw that there are particular community campaigns that are advocating like electric vehicles.
That's right, yeah.
And what I was curious about is if that's also possible for cities, towns, and villages, and those are all inside your county, like how are they deciding who's getting credit for those people's acquisitions? You know what
Sure,
I mean?
no, and that is a good point. I don't know if we got a good understanding of that, because on the one hand, you wouldn't want to duplicate the same messaging, but at the same time, if this is the way the state is positioning how you would get funding, you would want all of the communities to get as much funding as possible. So I don't know if we could say, for example, take credit for the county and then have the city and the towns take credit for another piece and then pool of that money together. Most likely not. But yeah, we can take a look into that and see how that would work.
Yeah, and I can follow up with Rob. I was just trying to figure out, like, if someone in Brighton bought an electric car, who's going to get credit for that? If both the county and Brighton are running electric car community campaigns,
Right.
It doesn't seem like you could double.
So I think the action there is the campaign itself. It's not necessarily outcome.
Okay.
So
it's tied to outcome though. Yeah.
Well, so when I was down in Chautauqua County, we had that exact dilemma, and we were fortunate the campaigns were separate. So a community was doing one and the county did one separately. So of course that was easy to diagnose and figure out whose was whose. But your point about duplicate campaigns in the same geographic area is a good one, because I don't think.
Yeah, but that makes sense, because then presumably the campaign itself will be tied to the action. So you could account for that. So that makes sense. And then my other thing was, did Rob mention that there's grant money for adopting stretch building codes?
There is, but it's not one of the actions that he was familiar that counties could apply for.
Oh, okay.
So you see on this matrix here, it's cities, towns, and villages, because they're the ones who ultimately have responsibility for the building codes.
Clem, Matt, I'm just curious, do you know if a municipality can win just once? For instance, let's say we in the town are aggressive and we've got 3,000 plus points. We could possibly win 30,000 and, 6 months later we could have 4,000. Could we qualify then for a Delta award, say another 40,000 to put us at the 70,000 level? I'm just wondering how this all works, and we may not have any examples yet of how the awards are
So for
really.
the smaller communities, there are different grant thresholds, and I think one of the slides that
maybe
that Joe put up, I think before had more information on that. But yeah, so I believe that the 30,000 grant award is specific at 3,000, and then there's another $70,000 available at 4,000 points. So the total in that case would be 100,000.
Okay, so actually a town could continue to accumulate points and add on. Okay.
That's my understanding, yeah.
Okay, thank you, appreciate that. And of course, this is sort of a blind race too. I found when we did this in the town of Pittsford in 2017, we were always looking over our shoulder, wondering
And that's
who
one of the
else
things
was trailing us, because we were going for one of the last $50,000 awards.
Yeah,
and
and
we wanted to win.
that was one of the questions that I had for Rob, is like, how competitive is this? And he said that, within the first, I don't want to misstate the number at the time, but a lot of the grants got used up very quickly in the first round.
Yeah.
So he thinks that the way that this is structured right now, it's a little bit more distributed, and hopefully it will last through to the next round. And if it's successful, they may continue with this structure, or they may change it again. We never know. But
And Matt, you should know that the biggest point gains here is for doing 100% renewable community choice aggregation programs.
There you
Or
go.
New York State certified. That's like 2,000 points, and then opt-out community solar campaigns. So
right, unfortunately, the county itself can't
I know.
participate in that.
No, Suno's the town's involved in that heavily right now. So good deal. Thanks, Clem. Appreciate the update.
Sure.
Clem, can I ask one more question? In regards to the Climate Smart Communities program, you suggested that this body become the board for that?
So there's one of the mandatory actions is to appoint a task force, and the county executive gave the authority to this body to become the CSC task force. So yes, I mean, it was something that was discussed, and obviously this body appears to be the one that's most closely aligned to what the task force is, supposed to do under that action.
Okay, so I just didn't know if there was something more we needed to do to finalize that process, or if there were additional meetings we need to be taking, or if we're,
Nope.
Okay.
No, we have a letter that Adam Bellows signed, and that counts as us achieving this action item.
Thanks.
And I believe that letter, Sue, was sent out to the group, identifying the group, and then Clem is our coordinator. So.
Good deal.
Okay.
Thanks, Clem.
Sure.
That's essentially the end of the agenda. Is there anything else anyone wants to share before we sign off for the day? Going once, going twice. Okay. I think we meet next, the first Thursday of May, which, if I'm not mistaken, is May 6th. And hopefully there'll be no snow on the ground by then. But if we're finished for the day, let me just ask for a motion in a second to adjourn. Do I have a motion? I have a motion. Thanks, Michael Udelson. And a second? Okay, John, thank you very much. Appreciate everyone's time. Enjoy the weekend, stay warm, and we'll see you in May.
Thank you.
Happy
This meeting's
holidays,
adjourned.
Passover, Easter,
Yeah.
everything.
Happy everything,
Yeah,
everybody.
enjoy
You're right.
enjoy your